Welcome. Thank you for taking time to participate in our webcast today, Read Naturally in Response to Intervention. RTI is an important topic as schools are exploring new models for serving at-risk students. And whether you're just beginning to think about response to intervention, you're in the process of phasing in one grade level at a time, or you have a well-developed model in place, we hope the information in this webcast will be helpful. Let me introduce myself. My name is Karen Hunter, and I am the Director of Curriculum at Read Naturally. My background is that I'm a reading specialist and a learning handicap teacher. I taught resource specialist and special day class programs for many years in Northern California, as well as several grades in regular education. More recently, I've been involved in training teachers in research-based reading practices and specifically training reading coaches and administrators in Reading First schools and working as a site consultant to a number of Reading First schools. And as I look at response to intervention models, I think they create the structure to assist our at-risk students much earlier, before they experience that discouragement of failure. And I think as educators, we all want to see our students succeed. Well, let's get started. In today's presentation, we'll cover some background information on RTI and describe a multi-tiered model for reading instruction and how that fits into a language arts program. This certainly won't be everything you need to know about RTI, but it will provide us with context for looking at assessment and instruction for students in each tier in an RTI model and showing how Read Naturally assessments and programs can fit into that model. First, let's look at special education practices and how they have led to RTI. In 1975, the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services established a system for identifying learning disabilities and placing students in special education, and it's known as the IQ Achievement Discrepancy Model. I'm sure you're very familiar with this model. Standard scores on an IQ test are compared to standard scores on an individually administered achievement test, and if there's a certain discrepancy between the two scores and a pattern of learning disability, then a student qualifies for special ed services. But we know this model leaves many students kind of falling through the cracks. The problem is that if the discrepancy is not adequate, they don't qualify. As regular classroom teachers, we try to meet the needs of all students, but these at-risk students often do not get enough extra support. So we wait a year and have the same student tested again. The discrepancy may increase and the student might qualify. Some students may be tested 2 or 3 or more times over several years before the discrepancy is adequate to qualify them for the support they need. They must literally wait to fail enough to finally get the help that they have needed all along. Next, let's look at regular education practices. The No Child Left Behind Act was signed into law in January 2002. Reading First is a key component of the No Child Left Behind Act, and it emphasizes implementing scientific, research-based instruction using programs with proven effectiveness, monitoring student progress using valid and reliable assessments, providing professional development to train highly qualified teachers, and all of this under the guidance of knowledgeable leadership. A key feature of Reading First is that all students are screened in the fall, and at-risk students are identified immediately. These at-risk students receive appropriate intervention whether or not they meet the criteria of learning disabled. Response to intervention brings these regular education practices together with special ed. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, known as IDEA, was signed in December 2004. Under IDEA, students receive support as soon as they show any signs of learning difficulty. Students can get the instructional support they need before they fail. In some RTI plans, a student's lack of response to this early and continuing intervention over a period of time may be used to qualify him for special education. Final regulations were passed in August 2006 that provide flexibility in RTI funding. So, RTI is an attempt to put general education and special education into one system for all students. It should not be thought of as a special education process. RTI is a general education process that can support and be supported by special education. Response to intervention is a seamless, collaborative system of instruction and services. Let's take a look at some of the key features of RTI. First of all, there is an emphasis on high-quality instruction based on the Reading First model that we looked at on an earlier slide. Effective core instruction is the foundational cornerstone for an RTI model. So implementing research-based language arts curriculum with fidelity and having that well placed in a school is foundational for everything else that we're going to talk about in an RTI model. Benchmark assessments, which are used as a screening in the fall, identify at-risk students. A collaborative team that's made up of regular ed and specialists determines appropriate interventions, and these are implemented for 10 to 15-week cycles. Regular progress monitoring answers the question, is the intervention working? The collaborative team meets regularly to review student progress. This is a decision-making team. For example, they would ask, should the intervention be continued? Should it be adjusted? Should it be changed to a different or more intensive intervention? Should the student be moved from Tier 2 to Tier 3 for more time or intensity of instruction? If there's a lack of response to the intervention over several cycles, it may indicate a learning disability. Some RTI plans allow this to be used rather than the discrepancy model for identifying learning disabilities and formally placing students in special education. The final regulations were signed in August 2006 that allow flexibility in funding RTI. So up to 15% of IDEA money may be used, and up to 50% of any increases to Title I funding may be used. Let's look at instruction in an RTI model. How can reading instruction be organized to reach all learners, especially our at-risk students? We'll look at reading instruction in two parts. We'll call the first part, about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the grade level, the equity shot. All students receive Tier 1 instruction. They are all taught all of the basic components of the core curriculum. We teach everyone the core lessons in phoneme awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension, and fluency. All students have access to this grade-level curriculum during this equity shot. Following that, the second part is the 30 to possibly 60 minutes when students are grouped homogeneously for small group instruction. And in many RTI plans, this may be called a 3-tier model. Let's take a closer look at this 30 to 60-minute 3-tier model. The teacher meets with small groups and provides instruction based on the needs of the students in that group. The instruction or the intervention changes at each tier. Remember, all students receive Tier 1 instruction during the first part, that equity shot. 75 to 80% should be making satisfactory progress with regular Tier 1 instruction. Students who are served in Tier 2 are at some risk. Tier 2 is small group instruction in addition to the time allotted for core reading instruction, and about 5 to 10% need this targeted intervention. Students who are served in Tier 3 are at risk. Tier 3 intervention will probably involve up to 5% of the students in intensive, individualized intervention. Grade levels may coordinate reading times so the collaborative team can work with all students. For example, a collaborative team that includes the specialists and all of the third grade teachers arranged the 3-tier reading block to begin about 10 o'clock each morning. The special ed and the Title I teacher teach small Tier 3 groups of the most at-risk students coming from 4 different third grade classes, while the teachers from each of those classes teach the other students served in Tiers 1 and 2. That would be one way that you could reschedule so that all staff could work with all students. Progress monitoring is done regularly to monitor student progress and to identify students who are not responsive to intervention. And as I said before, interventions are tried for 10 to 15-week cycles with possible adjustments along the way. Now we're going to look at assessment and instruction separately in a multi-tiered model. Our example will be a 3-tier model. Some plans have a 4-tier model, and that specifically serves special education in Tier 4. But in many models, special education services are integrated within Tier 3. Let's talk about assessment first, the left side of this model. What kinds of assessment do we need with each tier? An assessment plan is a key component of an RTI model, and various types of reading assessments will answer these questions. Screenings will answer the question, who needs intervention? Which students need extra instruction? Progress monitoring will answer the question, is the intervention working? Is the student learning? Is the student moving closer to the benchmark? Diagnostic assessments will answer the question, what are the student's strengths and needs? What does an individual student know? And what does he still need to be taught on a continuum of reading skills? Outcome assessments will answer the question, did the student meet the benchmark by the end of the year? Where is he in relation to grade level proficiency standards? Let's look at how each of these assessments are used. Benchmark testing provides the big picture in an RTI model. All students are tested 3 times each year. They are tested on grade level material. We want to know, how do they measure against the grade level standard? A benchmark assessment is used in the fall to screen students, to identify which students are on a trajectory to meet end-of-the-year benchmark or proficiency standards, and to identify which students may be at risk and may need additional support right away. A benchmark assessment is given to all students again in the winter as a progress monitor to see if they're continuing to make progress towards the end-of-the-year benchmark or proficiency standards. A benchmark assessment is given to all students in the spring as an outcome measure to see if the students have indeed met the benchmark or proficiency standards at the end of their year of instruction. Frequent progress monitoring zeroes in on at-risk students, those who are served in Tiers 2 and 3. Throughout the year, the progress of these at-risk students is monitored to see if their skills are improving. This information is used for decision-making as the collaborative team reviews student progress. We want to know on a regular basis, is the intervention working? Is the student making progress toward the benchmark? If the student is not showing growth, does the intervention need to be changed? Diagnostic assessments inform our decision-making as we plan instruction. In an RTI model, the collaborative team uses diagnostic assessments to make decisions about the appropriate intervention for a student. If a student who served in Tier 2 or 3 is receiving extra support and is not responding to the intervention, not making the expected progress, the collaborative team may choose to adjust or change the intervention. But if the student continues to make little or no progress, further diagnostic tests may provide helpful information in deciding what to change or adjust in the intervention. Diagnostic assessments may be used as a screening even for students who are not at risk. For example, a diagnostic phonics assessment may be given to all second graders and used as a skills checklist. Diagnostic assessments are criterion referenced. The items on the test follow a specific sequence of skills. Diagnostic assessments show a student's strengths, what does he already know, and his instructional needs, what do I need to teach him next. Let's look at how different types of reading assessment fit into an RTI model. When we look at assessment, it does not need to be same size fits all. Students instructed at each tier should be given appropriate assessments. I think we would all agree that we want to avoid giving unnecessary assessments because the time is certainly better spent teaching. Students who are served in Tiers 1, 2, and 3 are given benchmark assessments such as a timed oral reading fluency in the fall, winter, and spring to see how they measure against the grade level standard at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. Students served in Tiers 1, 2, and 3 are given end-of-theme or end-of-unit tests in their core reading programs. We want to see if they have been learning what we've been teaching during that unit or theme. Students served in Tiers 2 and 3 are given progress monitoring assessments at regular intervals because we want to determine whether or not they are making the expected improvement to determine whether those interventions are effective. Students served in Tier 2 may be progress monitored once a month. Students served in Tier 3 are progress monitored more frequently, maybe as often as every week or every other week. Diagnostic assessments may be given to students in Tiers 2 and 3 to identify their strengths and needs in specific skills to plan intervention. And, as I mentioned earlier, these same diagnostic assessments can be used as a screening for all students, including those served in Tier 1. 3 assessment tools are available through Read Naturally: the Reading Fluency Benchmark Assessor, the Reading Fluency Progress Monitor, and the Quick Phonics Screener. And we're going to take a brief look at each one of these. Read Naturally has developed the Reading Fluency Benchmark Assessor. Reading researchers have shown that a student's oral reading fluency can be used as an indicator of overall reading achievement. So, 1-minute timed oral reading fluency assessments given 3 times a year allow teachers to quickly identify students who are meeting grade level standards and those who may be at risk. 3 passages are provided for each grade level, 1st through 8th, to be given in the fall, winter, and spring. 3 sets of randomly ordered letters for rapid letter naming are provided for kindergarten and early 1st grade. Software allows you to record errors as the students are being tested, and it provides a variety of reports and recommendations. Read Naturally has also developed the Reading Fluency Progress Monitor. Progress monitoring can be used to see if interventions are effective by following a student's reading gains over time. It's used to monitor students served in Tiers 2 and 3. There are 30 stories for each grade level, 1st through 8th. And the 30 stories are provided so that students served in Tier 3 can be monitored frequently, as often as every other week or even once a week throughout the year. A third assessment that is available from Read Naturally is the QPS, the Quick Phonics Screener, which has been developed by Dr. Jan Hasbrook. The QPS diagnoses decoding skills from beginning readings through high school, and there are 3 equivalent forms that can be used to screen in the fall and then check progress again in the winter and the spring. It is administered individually to diagnose weaknesses in phonics and decoding for students who are served in Tiers 2 and 3. And, of course, it can be used as a screening for all students in early grades 3 times during the year to monitor their progress on a continuum of reading skills. We've talked about assessment on the left side of this RTI model. Now we'll take a look at the right side and focus on instruction at each tier. Let's look at a sample 3-tier model. That second part of reading instruction, the 30 to possibly 60 minutes when small group instruction is based on assessment. During this time, the teacher meets with each group while the rest of the class works independently. Or, as I described earlier, leveled reading groups across all of the classes in a grade level can be homogeneously grouped. During this additional 30 to 60 minutes of small group instruction, students who do not need additional support to be successful in the core program are considered low risk, and we serve them in Tier 1 during the 3-tier block. Students who are served in Tier 2 are at some risk, and students who are served in Tier 3 are at risk. Tiers 1 and 2 are regular education, and Tier 3 may be regular or special education. Students who are served in Tier 1 are generally working at benchmark in the core program. Students served in Tier 2 are usually somewhat below benchmark in the core program, and students who are served in Tier 3 are often unsuccessful in the core program. During this 30 to 60-minute three-tier instruction, students served in Tier 1 may need occasional extra support, or this time can be used for extending lessons or providing enrichment or challenge lessons. Students in Tier 2 may need regular pre-teaching or reteaching in small groups, and students in Tier 3 need intensive support and in some cases even a replacement program. Let's review. All students received the core program in the first 60 to 90 minutes that we called the equity shot. This would be considered Tier 1 instruction for all students. During the additional 30 to possibly 60 minutes, three-tier instruction, which is shown on this slide, students are grouped for intervention or small group instruction time. And these flexible, homogeneous groups are based on student assessment. The teacher, along with the support of the collaborative team, decides what instruction or intervention will be delivered to each group. Based on assessment and classroom performance, small groups may focus on one or more of the components of reading instruction: phoneme awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, or comprehension. So what kinds of instruction or interventions are appropriate during small groups? Well, depending on the group, the teacher may teach enrichment or challenge lessons from the core program, reinforce or practice skills from core curriculum lessons. Maybe the teacher will review the lesson and then provide additional practice. Many programs have a pre-teach lesson to front-load students who may be at risk, or reteach material to be used after core curriculum lessons to review concepts and skills. Some groups may need the intervention components that are provided with the core program. The collaborative team may identify supplemental programs for practice or remediation, and this is where Read Naturally programs fit into an RTI model. Read Naturally Master's Edition, the Read Naturally Software Edition, and the 1-Minute Reader provide practice or intervention for fluency. GATE, the Group and Tutoring Edition, provides a direct instruction intervention that addresses decoding and fluency. And Word Warm-Ups provides practice or intervention for decoding. If a student is significantly below grade level, the collaborative team may choose to provide a replacement program for Tier 3 instruction. And Read Naturally's GATE, the Group and Tutoring Edition, can be used as an intensive replacement for young beginning readers. Let's look at the features of each of these programs. Read Naturally's original fluency program is the Master's Edition. The lesson design uses 3 scientifically based reading research strategies: teacher modeling, repeated reading, and project monitoring. Each student in a group needs a CD player, headphones, a timer, and a folder containing a selection of stories at his placement reading level. The Read Naturally Software Edition takes students through the same effective strategies as the Master's Edition, but the students do all of their work using computers. The software provides some additional features to enhance the learning experience. Both Read Naturally Master's Edition and Software Edition are excellent fluency practice for students in all tiers in an RTI model. The students who are served in Tiers 2 and 3 can be individually placed at their instructional levels. Let's briefly look at the steps that students move through in these programs. On the left side of this slide, you see the steps for the Master's Edition, the one that uses CDs and paper copies of the stories. On the right side, you see the steps for the Software Edition. These next slides showing the Read Naturally steps are not in your handout, but you can follow along by looking at the steps on the charts on this slide. Once a student has been placed at the correct readability level and his oral reading fluency goal has been set, he selects the story. The student listens to the definitions of several key words in that story. Next, the student writes a prediction based on the title of the story, the key vocabulary words he has just learned, and any clues that the illustrations may offer. The student then reads the story for 1 minute to get his cold time. How many words correct per minute can he read with no previous practice on this story? This is his baseline score. The student records his cold score on his graph in blue, or the software does this for him. The student listens and reads along with the story 3 times. Each time the speed increases slightly. This is the teacher modeling strategy. After the student has practiced with the model, he begins practicing on his own. This is the repeated reading strategy. He reads and rereads the story. He times himself each time he reads it. And he works toward his individual goal, increasing the number of words he reads with each practice. When he is able to read the story at his goal rate, he answers comprehension questions. This step emphasizes the importance of reading for meaning, not just reading fast. When the student is ready to pass a story, the teacher listens to his 1-minute timing, counts any errors, and provides feedback on expression. This is called the hot timing. The hot timing is recorded in red, and a student can see his improvement by comparing his cold timing score in blue to his hot timing score. Finally, the student writes a retell of the story or practices word lists depending on the level and the curriculum he is using. The student then selects a new story and he goes through the same steps. You can see from this very quick overview of the Read Naturally steps that students are actively engaged in fluency practice using these research-based strategies. Being able to place each student at his appropriate readability level and set his individual goal makes this an ideal supplemental program for fluency practice for kids who are Tier 1, pretty much working at grade level, or intervention for Tiers 2 and 3 in an RTI model. Read Naturally's 1-minute reader program follows the same strategies we just covered using the Master's Edition or the Software Edition, but the 1-minute reader program is designed for school-to-home use. GATE, the Group and Tutoring Edition, supports decoding and fluency. GATE is an effective direct instruction phonics program for teaching beginning reading to small groups. The teacher guides the students through letter sounds and blending. The students practice fluency using the 2 lowest levels of the Read Naturally phonics stories. GATE is an appropriate intensive intervention for beginning readers served in Tier 3 who need to recycle through beginning reading skills. And finally, Word Warm-Ups supports decoding skills. It is a quick, timed, independent practice program. Students develop mastery and automaticity in decoding one-syllable words with common phonics patterns. The students work about 10 minutes a day on these audio-supported exercises. Word warm-ups can be used with students in all tiers for practicing these early decoding skills, but the students in Tiers 2 and 3 can be individually placed at appropriate levels for targeted practice. Each student in a group needs a CD player, headphones, a timer, and a folder containing the appropriate exercises. Here's a sample exercise from Word Warm-Ups that focuses on some less common sounds of consonants, the soft sounds of C and G, and the silent letters in KN, WR, and GN words. The student listens to an audio lesson which reviews each focus sound in the sample words at the top of the page. The student does a cold timing by reading down each column and then across each row. And at the end of 1 minute, he records his score as a cold score at the bottom of the page. The student can then practice the word list as he reads along with the model on the CD. The student practices reading down each column and then across each row until he can read all of the words in both directions in 1 minute. When the student is ready, he signals for the teacher to come and listen to his hot timing. If he passes, he goes on to the next lesson. As you examine assessments and intervention options for your RTI model, you may want to consider using Read Naturally's assessments, the Reading Fluency Benchmark Assessor, the Reading Fluency Progress Monitor, and the Quick Phonics Screener. And if you look at instructional programs for your RTI model, you may want to consider Read Naturally's Master's Edition, the Read Naturally Software Edition, 1 Minute Reader, GATE, the Group and Tutoring Edition, and Word Warm-Ups. Read Naturally has prepared a white paper to support schools that are developing an RTI model. It contains helpful general information about RTI and more detailed information about each of our Read Naturally assessments and programs and how they fit into an RTI model. It's available on the Read Naturally website.